fellas, ladies, gents, those in between. Welcome back to another video. Today we're going to talk about the Houston Rockets, a team that I have made a few videos about. I am no stranger to talking about the Rockets because I find them to be an incredibly fascinating team. They are a team that has made a lot of moves that I like, some moves that I don't like as much, and they're one that I have a good time talking about. So I wanted to go over, their offseason, go over some of their expectations that I might have for them for the next season, and, things of that nature. So to start off, the first big thing of the offseason is always the draft, right? And I really liked the Rockets draft. I thought that they did very well. I think I liked the picks that they made, and I think that they will be a very good team because of Reed Sheppard. Not solely because of him, but Reed Sheppard will absolutely help, right? He's going to a lot easier for them to have spacing on the floor. He's going to make it a lot easier for like Amen Thompson, because initially I expect that him and Amen Thompson will be the backup backcourt, with Amen as the backup point guard and Reed Sheppard as the backup shooting guard. Reed Sheppard shot over 50% on NBA range threes in college, which was, I believe, the best in the nation, or at least up there, right, in the draft. And that sort of shooting, next to Amen Thompson's athleticism and cutting and finishing and playmaking, that's going to be electric. Reed Sheppard can do a lot of the secondary creation stuff that we've seen him do at Kentucky. He's done it at Summer League. He looked fantastic at Summer League. I don't expect him to come in and average 15, 20 points a game, but I do expect him to be a very solid contributor off the bench, and by the time the season ends, it would not shock me if he was a starter. It would not surprise me if either him or Amen Thompson took over as the starting two guard for Jalen Green, because I don't think Jalen Green is long for this roster, personally. I could obviously be wrong. This is just my observations. These are just my opinions. But I am not a big Jalen Green guy. I'm not a big fan of his game. I don't think he fits super well at Houston. And I think Houston needs to consolidate a little bit, because they have all these young guys. Like, if you go through their roster, they have guys who just are really, really young. They have N'Faly Dante, who's a rookie in a two-way. They have Jonathan Williams, who was a two-way from a couple of years ago, who I guess is 25. He's not that young. But they have Reed Sheppard. They have Jalen Green. They have Amen Thompson. They have Cam Whitmore. They have A.J. Griffin now, who they traded for on draft night. They have Jabari Smith Jr. They have Tari Eason. They have Sengun. They have a lot of these guys that are young. And being young is a very good thing in the NBA, and having these guys is a good thing in the league. But also they need to consider that, hey, they want to be competitive, They have Ime Udoka, who is a really good coach, a guy not so much, but is a really good coach, and you bring him in to be a competitive team. You don't give Fred VanVleet $40 million a year to not be a competitive team. And they have the talent to be a competitive team, as we saw down the stretch of last year. They went on like a 13-game win streak, I think it was, 12, 13 games, 11-1 down the stretch or something, and they did very, very good. Very, very good. They almost made the play-in game over the Warriors, and they fell just short. This year, I expect them to be a top 8 seed. I think they could maybe sneak in as a 5 or 6 seed as well. I think 4 seed's pushing it a little bit. I don't think they'll quite get there, but I do expect them to, be pretty good. I expect them to win at least 45 games, I'd say. And in the West, that's not fantastic, but that's still a good step for them, and something that I think is pretty realistic. And with Jalen Green, I just don't think he's super complimentary to a lot of the roster. Like Amen Thompson, he's at his best when he has his ball, when he has the ball in his hands, and Jalen Green is not a good off-ball player, really. He's not a good defender. He's mainly just a scorer. You're not going to get a ton of playmaking from him either. So because of that, I think you trade him probably around the deadline, see what you can get for him, because I doubt you want to pay him a max contract. With all these max contracts being handed out, it's getting less and less like, hey, we want to keep young guys if they're like good enough to demand money but not good enough to be worth that money, because Jalen Green was a second overall pick and he's good enough to warrant some money, but his agent is going to be like, hey, we want, and he's not worth that, not even close. Like Jonathan Kuminga recently has been like, it's been reported that he's expecting and wanting a $224 million contract. If the Warriors pay that to him, they're like very hamstringing themselves. That would be an insane contract to hand out. I would hate that contract. And if you hand out anything similar to Jalen Green, you are also hamstringing your franchise. So, you know, I think they probably trade him and one of their other young guys, whether that be, even though he's not really young, Jayshawn Tate is still fairly young in terms of NBA experience. He's only been in the league for 4 years. If they trade him, if they trade Tari Eason, I know they've been rumored to be open to trading. If it's one of those two and Jalen Green and they get another player in, I don't really hate that for them. And I think that's probably a likely step that they'll take at some point this season. But talking about a couple of their other young guys, because I did an entire video on Reed Sheppard, so if you're like, oh, you didn't go too in depth, go watch the video. It's from a couple months ago. I think it was made pretty much after the draft. I think I titled it like the Rockets got a steal or something, because he might be the best player in the draft class. He was the best rookie at Summer League, I think, in my opinion. Whatever. And then you look at Amen Thompson, who I think is somewhat underrated. You know, I don't think he's super like underrated or anything. A lot of people do think he can be good, but I've had the opportunity to like see him before he went to the NBA. I saw him at OTE. I got to interview him. I never released those interviews, but I did go. You know, I interviewed both him and Asar, and then I also did Griggs. I think it was Bryce Griggs. Anyways, you could tell that those two were different. They were on a different level of athlete from anybody else at OTE, and OTE was way too easy for them. And then they got to the NBA and they look like generational athletes in the NBA as well. They are insane. Like, their load time is next to nothing. Load time is just how long it takes you to like load up for a jump, right? They don't load up. They just go. They're just able to jump, and they have like 40-inch verticals or like 48-inch vertical. Like, they have insane verticals at like 6'7". They are lightning quick. It's insane watching them. If either of them can figure out how to be a league average shooter, that's an all NBA player for years. I don't think either of them are going to learn to shoot. I wouldn't bet on that. You know, they are both very poor shooters. But Amen, I have a little bit more faith in becoming a shooter than Asar, because I think he took a little more than Asar. He looked a little better, but I still think he's pretty bad. And he is electric, you know, with the ball in his hands. He's a very good defender, very good playmaker. He's just good. He's just going to be good. And I don't have any issue projecting him to be an all-star one day. I think he'll be an all-star in like 3 years. I think by the second year of his rookie extension, he'll be an all-star. And, dude, he's really good. He's going to be one of the best defenders in the league, one of the best playmakers in the league, one of the best transition players in the league. It's going to be great. So then you move on to Cam Whitmore, who is a scorer. He's a hooper. That is the only way to describe his game, because that dude does not have a passing bone in his body. He passes less. I forget what stat it was, but there was something that came out, and it was like, hey, he passes less than Michael Porter Jr. And Michael Porter Jr., one of his nicknames is Michael the Possession Ends Here Jr. You can do with that what you will, right? But he is a hooper. He can ball. He knows exactly how to. He's very good at it. Last year, in the 47 games he played at the NBA level, he averaged 12.3 points on decent efficiency. It was 56% true shooting, which is like a little below league average, but not that bad. And he was doing that all in 18.7 minutes a game. That's a little minutes for a decent amount of points. If you were to, do per 36, he's averaging like 25 points a game. That's pretty good. He's a good shooter. He's a good slasher. He's a good finisher around the rim. He's good off and on ball. I have a lot of faith in Cam Whitmore as a player, as a prospect. I had him, I believe, 5th on my board going into that draft, and I believe that was the Amen draft as well. Yeah, that was. And I had Amen, I think, 3rd. So I was very high on both of them. And you look at the rest of the roster, Tari Eason is good. I think he goes underrated because he didn't play a lot last year. He was dealing with injuries, but his rookie year, he was very good. Pretty good shooter, pretty good defender. Had some interesting connective passing stuff. They traded for AJ Griffin, who I was high on coming into the draft, but he hasn't really showed much. He really was not good in Atlanta last year, and I don't know if that's going to change, but they traded like the 44th overall pick for him, so it's not like they invested a lot into AJ Griffin, right? But it is something where you look at it and it's, hey, they have a promising young guy, potentially promising, because during his rookie year, he looked really good. And coming into the draft, a lot of guys who I respect and me as well had him top 6 or top 7 on their draft boards. So there is potential there. And if he figures it out, cool. If he doesn't, you trade the 44th overall pick for him, who probably wouldn't even work out anyway, right? Then they have Jabari Smith Jr. And I think Jabari is a fine role player, but I didn't like the pick at the time. I don't like the pick now. I don't think he was worth a 3rd overall pick. He is a 36% shooter, and that's kind of all he does on the offensive end. He was supposed to be this deadly shooter, and it hasn't translated. He shot 30% his rookie year, 36% this year, not on super high volume. He's a good defender, though, switchable. I like him as a defender. I think he'll be fine, but I do think he's more of a bench player long term. I'm higher on Cam Whitmore and Tari Eason long term. And then you have Sengun. And Sengun's really good. Sengun can pass. Sengun can score. He's sort of like a Sabonis or Jokic player, like in that mold. Be it, I don't think he's going to get to the levels of Jokic. I think he could probably surpass Sabonis. I think he's who you build this team around. I think he's to that level, right? I think he can be a top 20 player in the NBA. I don't think he'll be as good as Jokic, obviously, because projecting anyone to be a 3-time MVP is hard, especially like someone who you're like, yeah, maybe he can be a top 20. But those are sort of my thoughts about the Rockets. I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you did, like, subscribe, and comment, the next team you want to see, because these are sort of the videos I'm going to be pumping out until the season starts and I can actually start covering news and that sort of thing. So if you like that, and also go back and watch the last episode of the podcast. It didn't do too well. I don't expect those to do very well. I do those just to yap. But if you do want to see like 20 minutes of me yapping about the Lloyd marketing contract, about Jamal Murray, all that stuff, go watch it. Anyways, have a good one. Bye.